Hola, mi amigos. Esta es mi primera vez en Madrid. Estoy muy feliz de estar aquí. And that's it, okay? I used Google Translate before the presentation, so I hope it was okay. It sounded a little bit like Spanish stuff, but I'm not sure. So my name is Michael Chaize. I work for Adobe, and I am French, so I come from the country of Karim Benzema, who only scores in your country, okay? Every time he plays for France, he doesn't score. So I don't know what's happening with Madrid, but you are in the good side for him. And so we are making a tour with, I'm part of a team called the Developer Evangelists, and we are doing a tour in Europe and also in Asia, in Australia, in the States, to present the new Edge tools and services and what Adobe is doing with the web with HTML5. So maybe what I can ask you is just to understand who you are, who is more a designer on the design side, okay, developer side, okay, both, should be here. Yeah, today it's very hard to find a frontier between design and code. So that's what I call creative code. I like this term. So there is a Mihai with me also. He comes from Romania, and he will present the second part of this presentation. And so what we wanted to do is to split the presentation. So I will focus more on interactive design, and he will focus more on the coding stuff, okay? Also, I am in charge of digital magazines. So if you are a web developer, if you want to learn the new techniques, the last JavaScript frameworks, the last tool, so I am in charge of Happiness, which is a digital magazine. It's free. It's available on tablets, on your iPad, on your Android tablet. And there is a PDF also every month on happiness.com. Okay. So first I will focus on what Adobe is doing for web standards, because we have a dedicated team of engineers just working on the new CSS specifications to have a web more visual, more engaging, more expressive. And I will start presenting some tools for web designers, okay? And then Mihai will show up and present stuff for web developers and provide some links and some giveaways. And we have a cool gift for you. So at the end of the presentations, you can win a 1-year subscription to the Adobe Creative Cloud, okay? So who is familiar with the Creative Cloud? Who knows what it is? You? Okay. So Creative Cloud is so a subscription. You pay something like 49 euros per month, and you can access all the Adobe products, okay? Everything. Photoshop, Premiere, After Effects, Acrobat, Dreamweaver, Flash Pro, everything for 50 euros. And so at the end of this presentation, you can win a 1-year subscription. And also we have some t-shirts, we have some cool stuff. Okay, so what Adobe is doing with the web, I want to say that we focus on something very specific, what we call the expressive web. So everything that is visual. And this is not new, okay? We don't focus on the back end, we don't focus on the performance of JavaScript, for instance. We just focus on how you can express yourself, express your creativity on the screen. And this is not new, because if you look at what we are doing with Flash for 15 years, this is also a way to express yourself on the web. These were the first vector graphics animations, video, streaming, real time. I mean, with Flash, you can do a lot of stuff. And now we have a team of engineers focusing on Flash, but also a team of engineers working for HTML5 with all the browser vendors. So we are working with Google, with Microsoft, with Mozilla, with Apple, all the actors to build a better web, okay? Are there some Flash developers in the room, or Flash designers? No? Yeah, some Flash guys? Okay, cool. Don't be shy. I started my first Flash website in 1999. So I love Flash. So what has changed? So you will see a new trend at Adobe. Usually Adobe, we provide tools that can do everything, okay? Like Dreamweaver, for instance, like a big tool, okay, that can do everything. But we feel that the job of a web designer and a web developer has changed. Okay? If you look at maybe 5 years ago, a web designer, he had to focus just on desktop users, just to focus on 2 browsers, 1 screen resolution, so we were targeting something like 1024 pixels, and we said, okay, it should be okay for everyone. And we were checking the browser compatibilities. If you look at exactly the same job today, you have to focus on 5 different browsers, but also on several devices, several screen resolutions, several screen densities, portrait orientation, landscape orientation, and most of all, you have to focus on new user context, okay? You cannot say, okay, my user will be at a desk, okay, in front of a computer, at home, or at work. No, no, he can be in the street, he can be in the metro, he can be everywhere. So you need to, and it has an impact on the design, okay? If you are outside, then you will say, okay, I must have a strong contrast to display the information, otherwise he won't see anything, okay? So, and because of this new trend, we believe that designers and developers, they need small tools, I would say 1 tool per task, okay, that will focus on a specific task and will solve a specific issue. So that's why we had to work on new specifications and new tools for what we call the modern web. So that's why now we have this team working on new specifications. So how does it work? We have engineers, and they build new features on top of WebKit. Okay, WebKit, the open source engine for the web. They build the new features, and they create proposals, draft, with the W3C, and they push new features, and they say, okay, that would be cool to have in the browsers, CSS exclusions, for instance, or CSS shaders. Okay. To push a specification, you need to have a sponsor. You cannot be alone. Okay? It cannot be only one actor. So every time there is a specification, such as CSS regions, for instance, we have another company, such as Microsoft or Apple, and they say, okay, we will push the specification together and work together on this. So as we focus on the expressive web, we have 3 priorities. The first one, we want the browser to be a place to host magazine-like experiences. Okay? So that's why we are working on CSS regions and CSS exclusions. And this morning, I saw fantastic demonstrations. Okay, it was your presentation. It was fantastic. Okay? So I will look ridiculous with my samples because of this guy. But I will try to explain, okay, how it works. So this is our first priority, magazine-like experiences. But what I like is that, okay, we produce this specification for the New York Times, you know, this kind of customers, and then you put it in the hands of creative guys, such as the first speakers, and you have something fantastic, okay, that we could not expect. So that's what I like also with visual technologies. The second one, we need to have more cinematic effects, okay? Today you can do it with Flash. You can do a lot of stuff with Flash. Now we are working to reach the same level of experience, but just using CSS and the web standards, okay? So I will show you the CSS custom filters, and some of this work is already in production. So there is, in Google Chrome, there are some basic filters, but also on iOS 6, now if you have an iPad, you can use a small part of this work and use CSS filters. So these are the basic ones, such as grayscale, blur, the basic maybe 6 or 7 filters. And also we want to use the knowledge that we have with Photoshop to bring advanced graphical effects in the web. So who is using Photoshop here? Who knows Photoshop lately? Yeah, a lot of guys, okay? That's a critical tool, okay, in the web. And when you use Photoshop, you use layers, and you can blend the layers together, etc. All this work, we want to enable it directly in the browser. Okay, so you will have divs, and you will say, I want to blend this div with the background or with the div behind using the multiply or the overlay or the screen blending mode, etc. So I think it will have a strong impact on the way we build websites in the future. Okay? Because today we work a lot in Photoshop, we export a lot of assets, but maybe thanks to this specification, we can do everything in the browser. So let me show you some demos. They are not as cool as the one you saw this morning, but there are some good ones too. Okay, let's start with CSS regions. So the basic use case of CSS region is just to define a flow for your text. Okay, so you define regions, okay, blocks, and you say, here is the text flow, and here is the path. So my text has to go to region 1, and then region 2, and region 3. Okay? So that if you resize, you will have this kind of flow, which is today very hard to execute. I mean, you have to write a lot of script. Here, you just define 3 blocks. With the CSS, you say region 1, region 2, region 3, and boom, it will work. Also, you can have multiple thread in a single page. So a first flow, that's the black paragraph, and the green paragraph is the second flow. And that's the same, so you can change the properties of the regions, and it will reflow everything. So this is something you can find in a paper magazine, and now you can enable it directly in the browser. And what I like is responsive design, because it's a hot topic. Okay, I guess all your customers are asking for responsive websites. I will talk about it later. But you can also imagine to have a page. So let's say that with the desktop breakpoints, okay, with the full resolution, I want 3 regions. But using CSS media queries, if I change the screen resolution, then boom, I have 2 columns and the same flow. And on my smartphone, I will just have 1 column. Okay? Just using CSS media queries, you will say, I want 3 regions, then 2, then 1. So if we look at a more advanced use case, so this is a presentation. Okay. Even doing that like horizontal layout, it's not that easy, but if I go here, I can look at what is the effect, I mean the same code on an iPad, how it will be rendered, and on an iPhone, using the same code, I will have a different experience. Okay, with the same page. So that's very advanced. So this is CSS regions, and on top of that, we are working on CSS exclusions, which is something very cool, where you can define shapes, and it will become a region, basically. Okay, you will say, okay, my flow will be inside this shape. So what is cool is that inside the browser you can easily also, so this is an exclusion, okay, this is the opposite. But these shapes, you can dynamically change the properties very easily. So you say, okay, I want a heart or a circle, and then you can rescale everything, render it, and you can see here the path that is used to exclude the content. So that's also very powerful. Okay, so CSS regions, CSS exclusions. Also, we are working on the CSS filters, and there is a very cool application called CSS Filter Lab. So I don't know if you are aware of this one. It's open source, okay? So you can test it directly with Google Chrome, even better with Google Canary, because you will get all the last filters working. And you can fork it on GitHub, see how it has been built. So it's very nice. So how does it work? You have in the center of the page an HTML page. Okay, so this is HTML with some divs, etc. here you have a timeline. So what I will apply at the beginning is a simple filter such as hue rotate, for instance, to change the colors. Okay. And I will move to the last frame and say I want to go here. Then you can go back and see the animation. Okay. So we can apply different filters. So let's play with something which is more advanced. Where is it? The curtains, for instance. So this is using a shader. So as you can guess, this is communicating with the GPU. So what is interesting is that the effect is, in this case, is on the whole page. Okay? And this is still HTML. You can still select the text, although there is this distortion. And again, I will say, okay, I want to start with this property, and at the end, I want it to be fully closed. And you can animate everything just using basic CSS transitions. So it's very nice. You can remove filters. And there are some crazy ones involving 3D. This one is funny. So you can apply a mesh. Okay, and let's say that at the end of my animation, I want to add some distortion like this directly on the page. So I have something like 12 points in my mesh, and then you will get the animation with the transitions, everything. And just using CSS, so here are the CSS properties that are applied. So the goal is to use CSS filter lib and then copy paste the CSS and use it in the border. Of course, all the borders are not have not implemented CSS filters yet, but maybe within 1 year or 2 years, it will be something very usual that you can use, very common. And the last one, compositing and blending. So I really like this one because I am a big Photoshop user, so it talks to me a lot. So let's say that you have 2 images, 2 div, 1 image on top of the other, and you want to apply some visual effects. So the addition, multiply, screen, overlay, and usually in Photoshop you use it also with textures. So I think I have somewhere, I can change the texture, yeah, something like this. Darken, lighten, all the effects that you find in Photoshop with your layers, you can use it directly using CSS properties. So that's very cool, and if you want to look at a live use case. So for instance, this is just a div with a blending mode and a color. So that's very, very easy to understand. And just using CSS transition, then you move the div, you move the colors, and you have something working. So if we look for the div overlay, it must be somewhere. Overlay background, so here I have the blending mode. You see multiply, which is a term used in Photoshop. And I can replace it with overlay, for instance, and boom, you will have the impact on the page. So this one should have a huge impact on the workflow, okay? How we produce titles, menu, even just, you know, with the rollover button when you want to change the effect. No, it will be just a CSS. You won't have to export 4 PNG files and switch them. So yeah, I really like this specification. So if you want to follow what we are doing with the CSS, everything is on html.adobe.com, and you can download these samples. You can see how to use the CSS parameters. You can even contribute if you want to contribute in the WebKit builds. But in this case, you have to be a C++ developer, so it's not easy. Okay, so these were for the specifications. Also, I want to say a few words about the fonts, because Adobe is working on fonts for, since the beginning of Adobe, okay, when they created the PostScript, they designed the first font with Bezier curves, etc. And we released this year, for the first time, an open source font, okay? And the name is Source Sans Pro. So that's funny because you download the font on SourceForge or on GitHub. You know? And you can contribute, you can add characters, etc. So what is interesting is that the same team has just released another font called Source Code Pro. It's designed by Paul Hunt. And this is for developers. Okay? This is for your IDE. So if you use Dreamweaver or Sublime, you can just download the font and add it, because this font is very smart for developers. I will show you why. For instance, you won't be confused with a B or an 8, the O or the 0. As you can see, the 0, there is a dot inside, so there is no way to be confused. The Y, the I, the L, the 1, everything also has been designed to avoid confusion. So it's a very, very nice font. And you can download it on GitHub. And this is the name of the designer if you want to give a prize on Twitter. But that's not it. We know that designers, usually they like web fonts. Okay, that's a fantastic new trend. Maybe you are using today the Google web fonts. Okay? So now we are announcing the Adobe Edge web fonts. And Google said, okay, Adobe will host also the Google web fonts. Okay, so there is a partnership with Google. They want Adobe to be in charge of the fonts, okay, basically. And we made the acquisition of Typekit 1 year ago. Okay, Typekit is the leader in the web font industry for professional fonts, and now it's part of Adobe. So this is Typekit, which is hosting the web fonts. And it's a set of maybe 500 fonts, and they are all free. Okay, so you can use it today. You don't have to declare a website, a domain name. I can show you how it works. It's very easy. And some of them are very, very creative. So if you go here, we can take Lobster, for instance. Lobster 2. I don't know them by heart, but there are more than 500 fonts. And with the Google Web Fonts, usually you you insert a link to a CSS. Okay, this is not the case with the Adobe Web Fonts. You insert a link to a JavaScript, script. Why? Because you can include parameters. There is an API where you can say, I just want a small subset of this font. I don't need all the characters, okay, to have a page which is lighter. And then you declare the font. That's very classic. Okay, so JavaScript, and then you declare the font. And you can use it today for free. Okay, now I will focus on tools for web designers. And I will present two tools. The first one is called Edge Animate to produce animation, which is one of my favorite tools. I use it every day. And the second one is a sneak peek of Reflow. So Reflow is a product that is not released yet, not even in beta, but I will show you a preview, okay? So are we in Spain? No? Isn't it supposed to be sunny in Spain? What's happening? 2 weeks ago, we were in Barcelona, and it was raining also. Yeah? So Edge Animate, okay. So who has ever tried Edge Animate? Have you tried it? Yeah? 5 people? Okay. Do you like it? Yes? Like it? Multo? Okay. Sorry. Okay. Ah, per escribir el código. Ah, okay. El código. Ah, sí, okay. I see what you mean. Okay. So he was talking about how you can play with the code. I mean, it's not easy with HTML to play with código. And it's true that we focus on a specific population. So the goal of HTML is to have animations on the web, but not using Flash, but using directly HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, okay, using web standards. And the choice we have made is to manipulate the DOM. Okay? So this is not an animation that will run in the canvas. Okay? We will directly manipulate the div elements on your page. And to do so, we have a framework called edge.js. So this is the one you want to play with, I guess, with the SDK, so an API. We explain how you can use it, etc. And this framework is the sequencer of your page. Okay? It will take a div, add rotation, etc., etc., and change the CSS properties. So using CSS transform, in some cases, you even have hardware acceleration, especially on the iPad. So you can have very good performance. But we know that if you want to create animations just with code, it's not easy. Okay? So that's why there are not so many animations on the web today, because it's not easy. So the goal of Edge Animate is to provide a UI, a professional UI, to create animations inspired by Flash Pro, inspired by After Effects. Okay? So we target motion designers, which is a very specific skill. Okay? Know how to sequence stuff. It's a very special feeling, a very special skill. And you have panels, the timeline, keyframes. So if you like animation, it will be very easy to start with. And you can target desktop users, but what is interesting is that as it's based on HTML, it will also work on mobile devices, on the iPad, on tablets, with very good performance. On the desktop, you cannot target IE6 or IE7, so there is a fallback mechanism. For these users, they will get an image, okay? Or you can force the installation of the Chrome frame, you know, so it will put Chrome on top of IE to have the animation. And you can also use Animate for digital magazines. So in Happiness, which is my digital magazine, I'm using DPS. I put a lot of animations built with Edge Animate. So what is good is that you can have animations everywhere. So I was surprised because I just discovered a website yesterday. Okay, a website built for Nespresso by Soleil Noir. Soleil Noir is one of the most talented agency, especially it's a strong Flash agency. Okay, they have a lot of awards. They are very talented. So they have built this site for the new Nespresso taste, okay? A coffee that comes from Hawaii. Okay. So you see the animations, and this is using Flash, okay? Because they work with Flash for 10 years, and for desktop users, they said, okay, we will use Flash. So they have built some crazy stuff, like if you move here, you have some parallax effects, cool animations, and you can discover the coffee, okay? It's an experience, okay? So that when you drink coffee, you're like, oh my God, I am in Hawaii. I mean, I don't know what's the goal, but there must be something like this. But then the customer asks them, okay, we need something for mobile users. We need some, if someone has an iPhone or an iPad, he has to see the website. And with Flash, it's not allowed by Apple. So actually, they used Edge Animate to develop an experience for the iPad. So they have this kind of transitions. You can see the shading, the fade, the rotation, etc. The transitions, everything. So it's not as expressive as the Flash one, but very performant, and it works perfectly on the iPad. I can show you 2 more samples, and then I will show you how to use the tool. This one is cool. So in a HTML page, you can just have one block dedicated for animation. Okay, you are not forced to publish a 100% animation. So this kind of transition, effects with easing, this is using Edge Animate. On the iPad, you have the same level of performance. Okay. So this is nice, and you can also use it just for small stuff, such as, for instance, a component like this, where you want to look at the market shares, then you zoom in, a small animation. Okay. So this has been built without any line of code. Okay, this has been built by a designer in this case. Maybe some code just to say, if I click here, I want to move here, but that's it. So let's see how it works. And you will see that it's very easy to use because I can play, I will build an animation with one hand because I have to take the microphone. So you will see that it's very easy. When you launch the product, you have 20 videos to learn how to use it. Okay? So free training lessons. So we'll create a new animation. I should take care of the size of the screen. Okay. Let me resize it. Yeah, so this is the stage. So you can say, okay, I want a small stage. What I like is that you can also say, I want my stage to take 100% of the page. Okay, it doesn't have to be a fixed dimensions. And then you have the timeline here, and you can import assets. There are some basic, very basic drawing tools. So you can draw a shape. Okay, change the color. And then you can start playing with the timeline. So you can say, okay, after 1 second, I want this shape to be here. And then this is your goal, okay? At 1 second, I want this circle to be here. And then you will pin the position. So you double click, boom, it's pinned. And now you can play, you can move back in time and stay at the beginning. I want the ball to be here. I want to change the opacity. Automatically, it will create the animation, and you can add some easing. So you can say, okay, I don't want a linear transition, but I want something like a rebound. And you will get the animation. Then you can start playing it. What you see here is already your web page. It's already HTML, okay? It's not something that is emulating, but you can also export it and view it in the browser. So what is cool with Edge is that you can say that this ball should always be so if I want to change the positions here, okay, let's say always 10 pixels from this corner. So if I export here, oh, okay, it has moved, but it will get stuck, okay? So that's cool because you can also start creating animations for responsive design. And if you change then you can change the layout depending on the screen resolution. Okay, let's remove it. And of course, you can import some assets. So we can add a background. Okay. And let's add something like the Earth and a French croissant. Okay. So this is the Earth. Also, if you are familiar with Flash and animations, what you want to create are movie clips or symbols. So an animation that will loop and that will be a standalone animation. So you can do it with Edge Animate. You can select an element on the stage and say, I want to create a symbol I will call it Earth, animated. And then I will have a dedicated timeline for this element. So if I move here and I say I want to add this shape, so I will rotate it here, rescale. So this is the initial position. Then I can pin it, move it here, and say that I want to extend it here and change the opacity with some basic easing. Okay, so you get my point. I want to create a signal like this. What I can also say is that I want it to be visible at the beginning. Okay. So what is cool is that this timeline is inspired by After Effects, and it's a very, very powerful timeline. So for instance, you can select this element and say I want to duplicate it. Oops. Okay, so how is it? Yeah, duplicate. So it will create a new layer, and I can start playing with the time, duplicate, and boom, now I have this animation. And you can add some script. So you can trigger JavaScript with the timeline. So let's say that at the end, I want to add some script and say, okay, you should, when you go at the end, play back the animation from 0. So it will be an infinite loop. Or you can also say, if you click somewhere, I want to play from this time or from this label. I mean, a lot of possibilities. So now if I export, so it's an infinite loop, okay? You will see the animation forever. But it becomes a symbol, okay? So in my main stage, I can say, okay, I want just it to appear like this. Okay, and it will, and you will get the animation. And when you create a symbol like this, you can export it and share it with another designer. Okay, so you can export and import symbol. So I will import Bobby. So Bobby is a smart alien. Where is it? Bobby. Okay, and as you can see, it will import all the assets. And now I can use Bobby in my animation. And if we look at Bobby, okay, he's already animated. And there is a joke label here in the timeline. So what I can say is that if I click on the Earth, I want Bobby to make a joke. So you can trigger event also like mouse event, touch event. So let's say that on mouse down, I want to get the symbol called Bobby. Bobby tongue, okay. And now you can start calling the methods of this object, such as play, from the label called joke. Okay. So now if I click on the Earth, you have some interaction. Etc., etc., etc. So if you know animating tool, if you know Flash, you will see exactly the same concept. Okay, you will retrieve all the concepts. So this is Edge Animate. You can download it on html.adobe.com. And I will share with you the price of this tool at the end of this presentation. Okay, bad news for the end. And then there is Edge Reflow. So again, this is just a preview, just a short preview. But what I want you is to understand what is the goal of this product. And then there will be a public beta very soon. So in the coming weeks, you will be able to play with this tool. And we need feedback. We need to understand that if there is value for you, or maybe it won't help, okay, we need some feedback just to reshape the tool. So we focus with this tool on responsive design. Okay, so responsive design, like this website. A website that will react depending on the resolution of the screen. So if I change the resolution, you see the menu is not the same for a tablet, and here, and for a smartphone. So there are maybe 4 or 5 CSS media queries, or what we call breakpoints. So who has already developed a website or tried to develop a website using responsive design and CSS media queries? Okay, maybe half of the room. So this is a hot topic, okay? All the customers, they want responsive design for several reasons. First, they need a website that is efficient on a mobile device and on a tablet, and also because they believe that it's super cool because you just code one website and it will work everywhere and it's super easy and it will be less expensive, okay? So we are web designers and web developers. We know it's not true, okay? It's a nightmare to produce a responsive design website. It's a nightmare, okay? You will wake up in the night like, oh, my CSS media query, etc. So that's why we are working on a tool to make it easier, especially for the web designer. Not that much for the web developer because it's quite obvious for the developer. But for the web designers, it's very, very new. So this is Reflow. Again, this is just a preview. It's not even beta software, but it's to show the concept and see if it looks good, okay? So where is it? Okay, so here is Reflow. Okay. So what is interesting with Reflow is that this tool is built with HTML and JavaScript. Okay. So what you see actually is a browser that is just launching HTML. Everything is HTML. And here in the background, this is your HTML page. So for responsive design, we are using the concept of a grid. Okay, so you can define the grid with the columns, and every time you will move something, it will snap to the grid. Okay. You can resize the window and see all your elements. And with Reflow, we focus on 2 things. The first thing is to style your elements directly within the tool. So let's say I want to add a div here. I want to resize it. And I will start styling it. So maybe with a gradient. Okay, something like this. Good. I want to add a shadow. So you have visual helps. I mean, you can directly change the direction, the opacity, etc. You can even change the corners. So let's say a 25 rounded corner here and here. And eventually add some text. Okay, so we will put Madrid here and change the style of the text. So first, just change the color. Okay. So there is an integration with the Adobe Web Fonts. So this is a preview of all the Adobe Web Fonts. So let's say, okay, I like this one. You just click on it, and it will be here in the list. Download it from the internet, and you can use it in your composition. That's very, very cool. Okay, change the size. So that's the first benefit, okay? You style everything without touching the CSS, just with tools, okay? So all the panels are just modifying CSS properties. So that's very neat. But then what I like is that you can define all the layouts for all the targeted devices, for the smartphone, the tablet, etc. So how does it work? You can use this and resize your page and say, okay, here it's not good. I need to change the layout because it will be used maybe by for a portrait tablet, something like this. So you say, I add a breakpoint here. It will use CSS media queries in the background. And you can say, for instance, this element should be hidden. And this one, I want it to be bigger in this case. Okay. And now I continue. say, okay, this is really not good. I add another breakpoint, and maybe I can start playing with the properties here, change the flow, and hide this one, and maybe we should just keep one picture in this case and resize it like this. So it's very easy. 2 breakpoints, they appear at the top of the window. You can see the different areas, and then when you resize, you see your responsive design changing with all the properties. And then at the end, you can select one div, for instance, this block. You click here at the bottom, and it will give you the CSS, okay, with the media queries. So you can export also all the CSS properties just from one div, one element. So it can be very useful just to prototype also the layout. I already have users and agencies. They want just to use it as a wireframe tool to prepare all the layouts, validate it directly with the customer, showing, oh, maybe we should put it here, et cetera, et cetera. And then you export the CSS. You send it to the developer, and he has all the skeleton, and he can work with the assets, the data integration, etc. Okay. Does it look cool? Does it look useful for you? Yeah? Okay. That's cool. Yeah. Otherwise, I will be the only one using it, so it's not a good investment. So that's Reflow. And to finish my presentation, I just want to recap and tell you that we're working on specifications. Again, you can retrieve all the samples, everything that I have shown on html.adobe.com. The web fonts are available today, more than 500 fonts for you, for web designers. Everything is free, okay? And there are even open source fonts, which is pretty cool. So Age Animate, this tool to create animations, is also in version 1.0, okay, because it was in beta for 1 year. And we had a lot of feedback, a lot of users trying the beta, a lot of feedback. So to be grateful and to say thank you to the community, Age Animate in version 1, only in version 1, is free, okay? And it's a perpetual license. So you should download it tomorrow if you are a motion designer, because version 1 will always be free. And then we will start with a price with future versions. But you can use it today, build animations, put it on websites. Everything is free. And Reflow, as I said, we are working on a public beta. So in the coming weeks, you will be able to download it, test it, and provide feedback. Okay? We really want to build the best tool for responsive web designers. And everything is on html.adobe.com. If you want to contact me, the best way is on Twitter. Okay, say @mchaize for Michael Chaize. Or my email is mchaize@adobe.com. So if you need information on the tools, if you don't find the tools, etc., you can just contact me. And that's it for the first part. Mirai, if you want to come and plug your computer, if you want to plug your computer. No? Okay. I can continue with that. So do you have questions on these tools, on the fonts, on Age Animate, on Reflow? Questions? So good question. So the question is Reflow a prototyping tool? And that's it, just a prototyping tool. So this is the kind of feedback I'd like to get during the beta period, okay? Because we feel that there is a need for responsive design, that today it's very painful. I visited a lot of agencies, and the workflow between the designers and the developers to produce a responsive website is very, very painful, okay? So that's why we are building this tool. So maybe it will solve the prototyping phase, maybe it will solve everything. My guess is that it depends on your organization and the skills of your designers and developers. In some agencies, you have web designers, developers. I mean, the kind of profile, they can do everything. In agencies, especially the big ones, you have the designers and the developers, and they don't talk to each other, okay? But my guess, yeah, it will depend on your organization, and Reflow will fit somewhere. Yes? What about Adobe Muse? Okay. Yeah, so Muse is a... No, so Muse is another tool by Adobe in the Creative Cloud, in Suite, for designers also. But with Muse, we target, I don't like to say that, but more InDesign users, because the tool really looks like InDesign, but then it will produce a high-end, first-class website leveraging HTML5. But without any line of code, you have dynamic elements and you build a website. Okay? So that's Muse. But Muse is not dedicated to responsive design. Okay? So today there is no plan to merge the tools. I think that Muse is bigger. I see it as a bigger platform for classic designers who know InDesign, which is a very specific skill. So Muse, for instance, is not part of the Edge tools. Yeah, it's more for the creative guys. But there is always an overlap. I mean, it's hard to set a frontier. I agree. Yeah, one more question. Yeah. Okay. So today you cannot import a PSD. Okay. This is a very early version. But maybe this will be the feedback we will get first. Like, we need a PSD. I don't know if you use Fireworks, for instance. Yeah. So Fireworks is the kind of tool very useful, where you can import a PSD and you select all the, you can crop everything, export the assets, etc. So maybe one of the feedback that we'll get is that we need that. Okay, we need more interaction with Photoshop, etc. Today it's not the case, but you can import images that you output from Photoshop and place it on the stage. But if we need to include a PSD, I guess we have the engineers in-house. We should be able to do it, but today it's not the... it's not in this version. That's also a good question. I'd like to. Today it's not possible. Today you can export the CSS for the divs, etc. And we have more and more users asking for that. We want to export the full web page. I think it makes sense, especially in a prototyping phase, because you want to export a web page, show it to the customer. You don't want to show the panels, everything. But what you need to realize is that this is, I mean, we are working on an HTML page in the background. So this is somewhere on your disk, okay? You can import a web page and start working with Reflow. You don't start from scratch, okay? So the web page is somewhere. The only thing that is missing is a button that is launching the web page in the browser. So yeah. We should be able to code it. But. So Mihai, Mr. Developer. No, he's such a geek, you see? You can feel the difference. He has a webcam, he has an iPad, an Android phone. Is it working? No? Okay. You want to play with the resolution and stuff? Okay. So Mihai will present Edge Inspect, which is the new name for Shadow. Okay. Have you used Shadow? Anyone? Yeah? Which is a very nice product if you want to test your website on several devices. Very cool. He will present Edge Code, which is the Adobe name for brackets, which is you will see an open source IDE for HTML built with HTML and JavaScript. So very interesting concept. And he will end with PhoneGap, which is a very cool open source technology to build mobile applications, like native apps, but using HTML. Okay. So Mihai, I'll let you present these tools.
Gracias, señor Chaize.